Welcome to the Heroic Investing Show. As first responders, we risk our lives every day. Our financial security is under attack. Our pensions are in a state of emergency. A single on-duty incident can alter or erase our earning potential instantly and forever. We are the heroes of society. We are self-reliant and we need to take care of our own financial future. The Heroic Investing Show is our toolkit of business and investing tactics on our mission to financial freedom.
Welcome to the Heroic Investing Show, a podcast for first responders, members of the military, veterans, and anyone looking to improve their financial future and gain some freedom with their time. We teach America's heroes how to build passive income, build their startup business, and safely grow wealth through real estate and other alternative investments. We help current and prior first responders put protections, systems, and a team in place to help them build a life where they can focus on their passion, that service or product that they are uniquely gifted to share with others, making the world a better place for all of us. My name is Gary Pinkerton, and I co-host this show with Jason Hartman. This is episode 214, episode 214. Today's guest is Larry Forletta. Larry is an investigative security consultant. He runs a company that you can find out more on at FCISLLC.com. So Foxtrot Charlie India Sierra LLC.com. And that was for all of you who didn't think I remembered the phonetic alphabet from my time in the military. So Larry had spent time as a Maryland State Trooper. He spent time as a DEA agent, combined nearly 30 years of time, and transitioned out to start his own business and has been operating that for 14 years very successfully in Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh and Cleveland area. And he focuses on technical surveillance, or countermeasures for that, private investigation, workplace investigations, the things that you think successful investigating companies are out there to do. But what he really brings to this audience today is a wealth of knowledge, having operated with public servants or law enforcement individuals specifically at the state level, and many individuals at the government level, and during a period of time as we were at the time transitioning pensions from the old, if you remember federally at least, the CSRS, the old defined benefit only type, to the new FERS, or Federal Employee Retirement System. And that one puts a little bit more burden on the employee to save for their retirement, as is the same trend in the corporate, civilian, public sector. So it was an interesting discussion there, but also he gave some great advice on how to leverage the skills, the culture that you have been immersed in during your time in service, and how to market that, and when to do it, when to make the transition, how to set yourself up for it. I think you'll really appreciate Larry's insight. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, here is Larry Forletta. Well, heroic investors, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today, I've got Larry Forletta on. And Larry is a career DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency representative, officer, and started his own practice about 14 years ago when transitioning out or retiring in 2006. So if you remember that period of time, that's the time when, or very shortly before, we actually started this podcast. Not my involvement, but when Jason started this podcast, his intent was to help out members, service providers, first responders mainly, as local pension systems were crumbling, state pension systems were crumbling. Thankfully, that has, because of a good economy, really kind of stabilized right now. But hopefully people have taken the lessons that we continue to talk about here on the Heroic Investing Show about figuring out, what you want to do after service, providing some options, getting some investing, real estate investing or something like that, small business going on the side, so you keep options, because a lot of people felt like didn't have options during that time. So what can Larry tell us about? Well, how about starting a business? How about chasing what you're really good at? How about what your skills are while you're in government service? And then also, he's going to talk to us about that pension. We haven't talked about that in several episodes, but I think it'll be really good. And so help me in joining them. Larry, thank you so much for joining us here on Heroic Investing.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So Larry hails from Pennsylvania, just north of Pittsburgh, Newcastle, and that's west of me here by a couple of hours, but nonetheless, pretty much here on the East Coast. Larry, so did you grow up in Pennsylvania, or what did you do before joining DEA?
Well, yeah, I grew up here in Western Pennsylvania. My career in law enforcement actually started in Maryland. I started with the Maryland State Police.
Okay.
And we were there for almost 20 years before I moved back.
And that would be Baltimore?
Yes, the Baltimore metro area.
Got it. I spent several years there myself, Naval Academy, Washington, D.C. in the military. So know that area, lots of very fond memories of the Annapolis, Baltimore, D.C. area, and some not so fond having to do with traffic. So you said how many years were you down in Maryland?
Close to 20 years.
Okay. And so your entire time, let's say in public service, before your own business, what does that span then?
I'd say close to 30 years.
Okay.
Because I started, actually my career started in Maryland with the Maryland State Police, as I mentioned, and then after working and being involved in undercover drug investigations, I then transitioned from the Maryland State Police to DEA.
Okay, got it. And so you probably have like a combination. Were you able to like stack those pensions? Maryland State, did anything from that, or did they like carry over?
No, it didn't carry over because I didn't have the required amount of time to be spent there. I was there for almost 8 years, and at that time you needed 15 years to be vested in a pension.
Okay.
So actually I started from ground zero when I came into the government.
Okay. And then in the DEA, you did retire with, I'll call it a full pension. I mean, I know there's a swinging scale of pensions.
Yes, I did. I retired in October 2006.
Got it. And so when we were off air a little bit here before recording, you struck me as somebody who knows quite a bit about the different kinds of pensions, the impact, and you had some reflections that I thought would be useful on the kind of pension you had as opposed to, what is currently out there. And you have a lot of friends and colleagues that are going through the new system. Could you just share a little bit of maybe just a little bit of the difference for people who don't know what the old system was like? And any reflections?
Well, the old system was called the civil service system.
Mm-hmm.
And that had, I thought, a lot of benefits for a lot of the government employees retiring. I came in the new system under what was called FERS. And this was all switched over in 1984 by President Reagan, trying to make changes in the retirement system for government employees.
So that's the federal employee.
I think retirement. I missed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, for employees retired. So I believe I missed out on the boat by a year and change because talking to colleagues who retired under the old system seemed to have a better pension in terms of how much money they're going to be getting a month as opposed to the FERS, because the FERS is a 3-tier system.
Mm-hmm.
and a 401k. But even those that were in the old civil service system were still able to invest their money in the FERS. So really, in my view, they benefited greatly from being stabilized in the old system and being able to invest in part of the new system.
Nice. And so I think the new system part that they could invest in, I believe, was mostly the 401k part of it. Is that true? Or
that's correct.
Yeah. And so the old one is CSRS, I think, Civil Service Retirement System, and then CSRS converted over to FERS, Federal Employee Retirement System. And one of the other differences that's sometimes overlooked is I believe for most people in CSRS, they did not contribute to Social Security, and therefore they don't receive Social Security benefits. So, most of us would probably voluntarily say, yeah, I don't want to contribute because it's not the best return on investment for your dollars that are coming out of our paycheck. We don't really have any choice in that. However, once you get out here and you're a CSRS person who did not save the difference, in some place, it's nice to get the pension, or nice to get the Social Security if you, like I said, if you didn't keep the other difference, if you spent it on vacations and stuff. So a little bit of forced savings sometimes does work on our behalf. I don't know which is better. Of course, a lot of state and local pensions, people who were relying on those in about the time that you were transitioning or you were retiring and starting your own business, a lot of those were going away completely. It wasn't just about which is better or worse. Unlike the federal one and the same kind of federal pension that I have, which is very similar to FERS, those really pushed some of the burden to you, and it's becoming more and more so every year. There's a new military version that's very similar to, it's even more like FERS in that pushing the burden to the individual that to save on their own, to save in their own 401k, because there's not this, traditional defined benefit pension system out there. And, it's the same way as civilian world, right? We're way behind what happened in the 70s and 80s when pensions in the corporate world really went away a long time ago. Do you have any experience or friends or colleagues that went through more of a local municipality, state government maybe system?
Yeah, yes, I did, and I've had friends on the state side and the local side, and I'm speaking with law enforcement agencies, and I can tell you here in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania State Police, I believe, have a better pension system than the federal government does. That's the way I look at things. So I've talked to them. I know, the type of money they're making off of their pension. A lot of them don't have to go get second jobs. The only ones that really get second jobs is to build up their Social Security. On a local level, though, it's a lot more not financially beneficial to them. So they do have to work a second job. And a lot of the police officers on a local level, some of them are working 2 or 3 jobs.
Wow. Yeah. I know a lot of police officers had a lot of officers as clients, I'm fortunate to say. And there's a push to do a lot of overtime, right? I mean, those guys that are sitting at the construction sites, right? They're all doing overtime, like you just said. Well, you were talking about additional jobs, but getting overtime and spending a lot of time away from family to handle that. Yet on the other side, I also, have people who are firefighters and get tremendous pay in some states. Think California, right? I mean, it's just incredible the amount of pay for three 24-hour days a week with 4 off or something on that kind of a cycle. So really, you said this at the beginning of your comments there, totally depends on who's paying the bills, right? Is it a well-funded state? Is it a very liberal state that pays very high? Is it a municipality that, a local government that can't pay that high? Or is it the federal government that can print money to make sure that our pensions continue? Is very dependent on where in the United States your pension's coming from.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, when you look at the big picture, I mean, obviously, most of our goals in law enforcement is to, increase not only our pay and benefits, but the type of work that we do. And that's why you have a lot of local and state law enforcement officers going into the federal government, whether it's DEA, FBI, ATF, or a host of them. That's kind of what the trend has been for quite some time.
And I think that's good for those agencies, right? They're bringing in very qualified individuals that are go-getters. Otherwise, they wouldn't be looking to pursue something like that. I mean, as long as it's not dead weight transitioning over, which is not I don't have personal experience, but I doubt that you would say that that's the case. So, following in your footsteps, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of good quality people on a local and state level that come to work for the federal government. And I believe that the federal government benefits from their work ethic and the experience that they develop working in a local and state system.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. So let's jump back to your world now. So you said 2006 you retired, and were you retiring in 2006 because that was the right time to retire, or because you wanted to get moving on your own personal business?
Well, for me, it was the right time to retire, and it was time to move on. But the way I had approached it was originally, I took a chance by retiring a little bit earlier because I retired at age 52. And in the federal government, you can stay till age 57. And then I also knew that somewhere in the middle, at age 55, your marketing begins to go down after 55. So I decided to take the plunge, took the chance, and went into my own business. And I was looking at a job. I had a potential job offer, but I decided to do it, to go on my own. And a lot of friends of mine, as I still hear from today, tell me how much they respected what I did by just leaving and having nothing lined up, so to speak, and going into my own business.
That's interesting. So they're saying, hey, we wanted to do what you didn't have the courage to do it, or didn't have the confidence to do it.
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah. And
because
why do you think they don't? Is it don't understand the marketability of their skills?
Well, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. One, yeah, they don't understand the marketability of their skills. And two, when you're used to getting a paycheck guaranteed to you every 2 weeks, you have a comfort zone. So,
yeah.
You know that you're getting a paycheck. In business, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
You have to really work hard to earn it. And so that is where the challenge becomes, and that's where a lot of people leaving government, most of them try to line up jobs, prior to them leaving. I just decided that I didn't want to work for anybody anymore and give it my own. And it's
worked.
And
I think, right. Yeah. And I did the same thing. And I had this, the heroic investors are going to be rolling their eyes because I've told this story a couple of times. But I remember vividly going to this job conference with a bunch of other senior military officers. And they actually paid us to do some marketing research, and it was a round table, and they went around the table and asked us these questions. And, what's most important about what type of work you do when you retire? What's most important about where you live? What's most important about this? And every time, a majority of the people were saying, I don't care. What matters to me is replacing the part of the income that's not coming from my pension that my family has become accustomed to living with. And it was that comfort, that pull for comfort, just literally did not care. We're willing to do almost any kind of ethical, legal job in any location in America to offset the pay loss that was coming by the retirement. And, so I always call comfort the comfort drug, because it really does lure us into, just like your buddies who reached out and said, man, I really respected you for doing that, or I envied you for doing that. Like you had the guts to go against the comfort drug.
Well, yeah, I mean, at some point in time, when you do things dangerously for a living, you have to decide, is it time to move on?
Yeah.
And am I becoming a burden in that world? And so, it's
a liability even. Yeah.
It's a young man's game to begin with.
Yeah.
But I think once you start hitting your 50s, I think it's time to make a change.
When you said you said your marketability at age 55, what did you mean by that?
Well, from what I gathered from different experts about that retirement age, that 55, they're saying that your marketability is still good at that point, once you decide to change jobs. As you age, once you hit 57 and above, it becomes a lot challenging. And it depends on what type of work you're looking for, depending on the demand.
Okay, so you're talking about like job hiring for your reinventing of yourself or whatever the next step is. Yeah.
Yes.
I understand. Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's some stigma associated with that too. That if you're over 57, you're over the hill. You're not retrainable. We're not going to get our investment back. I'm sure there's lots of stuff like people still not recognizing that. Working into your 70s is just fine, right? And speaking of that, so if I did my math right, my quick math here, you're 66 and running a company that's running strong, and I'm guessing, or I'm gathering, you're hustling out there just about as much as you did 14 years ago when you started this business.
Yeah, you just made me 1 year older. I'm 65.
Okay. I did 52 plus 14.
So yeah, I'll be 66 next year.
Okay.
And that's, when the Social Security will start kicking in.
Mm-hmm.
But I just felt that I needed to get and find and do something where I could call the shots, so to speak.
Okay.
And I knew that I had the talent as an investigator. What I didn't know is having the talent as a business person. And I'm still learning 14 years later about running a business. So every day is basically a challenge with working for yourself.
Yeah. And so as we retire or transition, whatever the word we're going to use, then we're looking for what's next. And, and you happen to start a business that directly was what you were doing in the military. Some of us can't do that. Not a lot of need for tank repairmen out there. But auto mechanic or whatever. So there's a way to transition your skills, but most of us, we're not doing those kind of skills. The skills that we're transitioning are gets up on time, reliable, ethical, shows up, you can count on him.
Yep.
And if people that you've worked in service with that you've then worked out in the industry or came across out in private sector, any other qualities that you want to reinforce with the audience that, listen, this is what you have that the competition or the other people out there don't have?
Well, I think the number one rule for me is integrity, because that carries over from, working for government all those years and coming into the private sector. So that to me is one of the key elements of success in business. And because you want people to understand that the service that you are providing is that they're getting the best for their money, and that you don't overcharge or undercharge, but you charge based on the type of case or type of investigation that's needed. And I think that's really key, because as you know, in any industry, whether it's government or private, there are some unscrupulous people. And so that to me is the key to success, is the integrity part of it, so that people understand that you're not just going to abuse their money and take advantage of them. I understand, because people work hard for their money, and we do as best of a case or investigation that we can for them based upon the budget that we receive from the client.
So so I like how you define integrity. I do so as well, but I used to define in the nuclear submarine force, and having gone through the Naval Academy, very, very focused on honor. And we would kind of always have this, we would almost liken directly, integrity with honesty and basically truthfulness. And it's more than that, right? The word integrity means being whole, like being 100%. And so when you say that, you're going to do X amount of work for an individual, or you're going to provide this level of results, you are what you say you're going to do, and you represent what you say and what you sign up for. And And so I think that being whole in your business and your person, delivering what you say you're going to, being somebody who can be counted on, that's really what I like the term integrity to mean. And I believe that's really what you're saying.
Yeah, and really another definition that I use as integrity is that real integrity is when nobody's really watching you, and you're able to perform the service that you're telling them that you're performing. And that's what integrity is part of that definition.
Yeah. Great addition to that discussion. So when you're leaving service, when you're leaving, whether it's civil service or military service, ensure that integrity is on the front lines of whatever business or career you go into, whether it's a W-2 job or your own business. And then all the things that I said about being dependable and can be counted on, strong work ethic. Any other advice for people who are coming up on a transition out?
Well, I would tell anybody, keep an open mind and really start preparing your skill set when you enter the private sector. A lot of times, once you're leaving government, you're kind of leaving it on your own. There's no real life preparation for you once you leave. We used to have some people come in, and give some general talks about, what life is going to be in a different world, so to speak, after you leave government service. And I think education is coming in and telling people, look, you have a skill set. Here's how you market that skill set. There are opportunities out there, and people are always looking for good quality people. And in my business now, I mean, when I use subcontractors, a lot of them are former prior law enforcement, and some of them are military people. And so I work with a whole, different group of people. But again, I kind of work with people who have the same mentality as I do.
Nice. So again, you transitioned or shifted directly into a position that was directly related to what you were doing in your government position. What if somebody doesn't want to do that position or can't do that position? What do they look for in their life and what they've been doing to find the clues for what to do next? Any thoughts on that?
Well, that's kind of difficult to say because everybody is different and there's a lot of individual preferences. For me, my skill set was as an investigator. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to expand off of being that investigator into a business person. Mm-hmm. And so what happened was the day that I retired, it wasn't within a couple of days, I get a phone call from a local defense attorney who I had been up against in federal court, hired me to do an investigation for him. And so that was all part of, your well-established reputation, even with the lawyers and the legal community. So that to me was an advantage in the sense that because most of my clients, I could tell you, are about 90% plus are from lawyers and law firms, and the others are different types of companies, et cetera. So that to me was the way I had approached it.
Nice. So what do you see in your future when 66 comes along and Social Security comes? Have you built a business that you want to keep going without your direct involvement, without doing the direct investigating? Are you looking to transition the business, or are you going to keep actually investigating until age 80, or what is your thoughts?
Well, I don't think I'll be going that far. I don't know yet because, there are times when I'd like to say, I'm done. There are other times when I want to keep going. Yeah. And I think that's always the hard decision that you have to make. Yes, I would like to sort of oversee things as opposed to be actually involved. And that's one of the difficult things that, that I'm learning, because I can't be everywhere to everybody. And I have to rely on others that of course, that I trust. So, yeah, I would like to transition from being right in the middle of things and just overseeing or managing them. I do public speaking. I do stuff, I do some presentations for law firms or lawyers under the CLE classes. I did some private things for different groups, fraud groups, women's organizations. So those are the kind of things that I would like to focus on more, and then have the investigations sort of run, me overseeing them. But that's kind of my goal.
Got it. So we have some organizations here listening that perhaps can use your services. So what's the best way to find out about your speaking topics, your experience in that role?
Well, the best way to look at us is by going to our website, and it's www.fcisllc.com, or you can go on the web. We're definitely on the web. You can find us, and you can see the types of cases that we have been involved in. We have some video on our website that gives you the idea of the type of investigations we have been involved with. And I've been on other podcasts talking about school shootings and things of that nature. So that's kind of where I'm looking at in a new direction, and in keeping the investigative side going.
Got it. Okay. Well, Larry, what did I not ask that I should have asked to add benefit to either what your goals are out there with your company or for the audience, the first responders and military?
Well, I would tell our brothers and sisters out there in law enforcement and the military to begin thinking ahead of the curve when you know that it's time for you to leave. I think most of us, for the most part, understand when it's time to go. Although there have been others that I've worked with, and they scrape their fingernails off the wall leaving, and it's in that sense, you feel sorry for them because they only knew one thing in their life.
Yeah.
And so you want to be able to have that transition, because a lot of people have a hard time adjusting, leaving the military or leaving government, leaving law enforcement, and now you've left something that you truly loved, and now you have to do something different. And that's where the difficult part is in that transition coming to the private sector.
Nice. Well, that's awesome. I really appreciate that feedback. I think that was an important nugget right there at the end. Don't wait forever. Don't wait too long. Have a plan, but at least think about it, right?
Oh, absolutely. You got to start thinking about it. Because the funny thing is, even in the military or in government, you have a lot of leaders in the management always giving you that rah rah chant. But at the end of the day, they're already out there making contacts to move and get their own jobs. So I tell the grunts, so to speak, you got to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because even though that they're preaching one thing, they're doing something else. And so
you have something in addition to it, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. The opportunities are there, but you got to reach out, right?
You have to. And you got to make the connections. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. I mean, even in today's record low unemployment, there's still unemployed people and people who are frustrated trying to find jobs. But I think it's because they're not doing the things that the other people are out there doing. This is a great talk, Larry. I really appreciate the advice you've given to those who haven't yet taken those steps, but are looking to follow in your footsteps and just don't know exactly how.
I appreciate the time, and thank you, Gary.
Absolutely, sir. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.